Voice is always changing. So, that's kind of what it was like for me, that Passaggio issue. It was a huge issue when I was younger, and then as I got older, it went away. But then my range changed. Um, and now I've experienced a break in my middle voice that didn't experience.
So, it's never done. I suppose is the moral of that story.
Never done. I all of a sudden, about 2 years ago, started to feel my middle voice, A4, did not feel like the same anymore. It felt like it was majorly in head voice, and that A flat 4 or G sharp 4 was in chest voice, maybe, or mixed. It just felt different, and it's hard to really conceptualize what the body is doing.
Mm-hmm.
It just felt different, and my voice just sat a little lower. Um, People don't like that. Often people they attribute physicality to a voice. So they see me and they see that I'm a thin, tall person, and the voice can't possibly come out of me. It does. It's just
Yeah.
one of those things. It's about them, not about you. So just always remember that it's people's criticism. Petty criticism is largely about their world and not about your world.
There's a quote by one, one of the famous marketing gurus, Seth Godin. You're not for everyone. And I
Yeah.
love that one. He's like, when you're marketing, you're not trying to get everyone. You're trying to get the people that will like what you have. And so you find those people, and those are your people. And you're not for everyone. And that's okay. No one's for everyone.
Yeah.
Eric Owens also put that differently. It was that, like, he said, Eric Owens was a Temple alum, and I was actually there when he got the Wagner break and was on the cover of Opera Mag. He came in to school to give his scheduled thing, and before he got his big break, all the students were like, I'm going to be more famous than him, as students are. You know what I mean? And he comes in after this big break, and everyone's cheering, and he's just like, "Oh, stop it! If I'd screwed up, you'd all be booing me."
He's a diamond in the rough because he can sing. Eric Owens, we're talking about the bass, right? The amazing bass.
The bass baritone, yeah.
He is amazing because he can sing Wagner and he can sing Handel. I saw him sing Handel role at Francisco Opera House, and he was phenomenal.
He's really good.
It was just that is the goal, is to be able to sing everything. He can sing lyric roles and he can sing dramatic roles.
Yeah. Well, he's got something interesting, is that this is a massive individual in stature and in voice. He's just got a big voice, but he's also got high notes, like up the wazoo. I used to think that with good technique, a lot of problems end up being solved. And I think that's the right way to approach it. But there are weird vocal anomalies, and he is one of them. Yeah, there's, who else did I heard Lawrence Brownlee live, in a really tiny room in Philly. He did like a gospel concert, and he just like has high D's. He's just like, yeah, whatever. And they're like, they're big notes. Like, these aren't like, oh, that's a high D. That's cool. No, it's like, whoosh, like.
I know, he could slap people around with that all day. I mean,
Yeah.
he's so good. I was actually thinking he is my favorite tenor.
Lawrence Brownlee, yeah.
Rossini, I mean, and that's his shtick. He can sing Rossini like no one's business.
Yeah.
Don Ramiro, that's one of his great roles.
That's a really hard role.
Yeah, it is. I have a recording of him and Joyce DiDonato doing it. It's just lovely. It's crazy to negotiate vocal transitions. It's really frustrating. That's where I was frustrated a lot at the time. And I think time solves a lot of these issues. Um, Technique certainly can, but time.
Would
Getting it a
you,
rest.
yeah, would you argue that, because I found this was helpful for me, was instead of thinking, and this is what I preach to students, instead of thinking in terms of like, oh, I'm this type of tenor, therefore I will work on this kind of break. Because I mean, like, it changes from day to day. Like, where my break is will change by a half step. I mean, it used to be a lot more
Yes.
difficult to navigate, but as I got familiar, like, I'm like, oh, okay, well, F is something I have to pay attention to today. It's like consistently warming up your voice, consistently paying attention, and specifically paying attention in a musical context, I think is essential, because that's really the only thorough frame of reference that you can have that you can apply to yourself. It's like super granular. So you get a lot of details because, I mean, there's a bunch of notes on the keyboard. So you have a lot, and then you just sing at the keyboard as you're plunking the keyboard, and you're like, oh, that's what's going on. And that is a lot more useful. It's a lot more nebulous, but it's a lot more useful than having like a rigid classification. You're like, I'm going to work on this passaggio, and I will use this vowel.
Yeah, it's all like, and I've simplified things as I've gotten older. I realized that working on 3-note patterns is good enough for me.
Yeah.
5-note pattern scale, good enough for me. 1 vowel, 1 consonant, really good enough.
It's because you can pay attention. You know what to focus on, like
right,
when you're
and,
working.
oh yeah, and I'm not as try to be really open, because before, if you're met with hostility, you're going to work that way. Because there was such distaste for my voice by people,
Right.
to say, sorry, not like my voice. It made me know that they did not like my voice or it was unattractive to them.
To them, yeah.
I then worked in that with my mindset that I needed to change the aesthetic quality of my sound. So then one day I listened to my voice and I like a recording someone had done during a recital, an hour, 2 to 3 recital or something. I was like, God Lord, I sound not like I do not sound like me. I sound like pinched. I sound like I'm dragging vocal weight up without the weight. So I sound just like a really throaty or tenor or something. I don't sound good.
Yeah.
And I had to be really honest with myself. And I had to say, yeah, I don't sound good. And I need to change my voice. This is not me. This isn't working. So I ended up, because around the time I did Orlovsky the second time and it didn't work out, I went to see a larynge, an ENT, and because I was having also horrible allergies. Let me just say that can affect your voice, and it can affect a lower
100%.
voice.
And this is not a unique, like it. I mean, it's not universal, but it is not an uncommon problem. Shirley Verrett struggled. She almost had to cancel a lot of gigs because she was struggling tremendously with allergies. And for those who don't know, Shirley Verrett is, I think she's still alive. She was an incredible opera singer. Like
Amazing.
an incredible artist, an incredible opera singer. One of the go-to Carmens for like over a decade. Like internationally, people would fight to have her be Carmen. That was one of her signature roles. And they pay a lot of money, which is good for her.
I know. She was a Spitzenfox, so she was able to go between mezzo and soprano very easily. And I think I read somewhere where she struggled with allergies and she was unable to sing lower parts of her voice, which is very true. When that really can happen because head voice, you're really singing, I think, on the finer edges of the folds, and as you get into the chest voice, you're using more vocal fold mass. And when you're swollen, when your folds are swollen, then it's harder to, then you're grabbing onto more mass. Isn't good of the folds.
Yeah.
So it's good when you have allergies to really cut it out, to just not sing for a while if you can. So that I went to an ENT. He looked at my folds, said, "You're fine. You got a little bit of acid reflux like everybody, because you're human, but that's it.
Right.
But it's not touching your folds. They're not. Your folds aren't red. It's just under there. It's you're fine. You're healthy." So really, that was telling me that it wasn't a physical thing that was happening. I didn't have nodules. I didn't have any damage. I was having technical issues. And I have a friend who's a contralto who I met in Chicago when we did an opera program, and she had very similar happen to her, where she was singing roles, certain things, in studio, and she just couldn't. She developed a lot of and mucus because it was not suited for her. The voice was essentially producing this because it just was uncomfortable. So those are physical indicators that something is not right.
Yeah.
If you're singing correctly. Another physical indicator can be intonation. If you're flat or sharp.
That's one of my
A lot of
favorites.
times, yeah, I was flat a lot of the time because I did not have a grasp, a concept of breath, and I was pushing a lot. I was pushing and a lot. Even when I was trying to lighten my voice, I pushed. You
Yeah.
can push and not be a heavy sound. You can push and it be a lighter sound, which is what I ended up doing.
And just to clear up, because like what I, push is one of those words that caused me existential anxiety for like a long time.
Yeah.
So what I think of as pushing is like usually torso tension or like too much intake of air. So it can be like an intent thing, but I think all too often people make it like they diagnose it like, oh, you have a psychological issue. You're trying to push your voice. Like you're trying to be loud. So don't be loud. And that's how people prescribe that solution. But it depends. It's like air is one of those things where there's only a handful of things to do right. And if you do literally anything else, you're screwing yourself. So it's like, what are the things you're doing? Is it an intent thing, or is it just how you think you have to sing? How big is your inhale? How have you stretched today? Did you do an intense workout? Like it's push is like a physical sensation that has multiple causality. So just to throw that out there, because that gave me a lot of anxiety when I was younger.
Oh yeah, I pushed. I think everyone goes through a phase of bad technique. It's how you learn. There's how you learn.
You got to screw up before you make good things.
Screw up. Exactly. I mean, screwing up during performance is one of the best ways to become better, because you have to learn in that moment to get back on, and those are some valuable for yourself. I've messed up in the middle of a huge aria and got back on and had no problems, in terms of being with the orchestra. It happens. It happens to professionals. I've concerts, seen professionals screw up, and they just smile and move on.
Right.
We're human. We're not robots. If you want to listen to a recording of something that's perfect, listen to a recording. Humans can make mistakes, and so that's another indicator of something's not right. Is vibrato. A tremolo, which is a really fast vibrato, can be an indicator of tension, as well as wobble. A wobble with that sort of quality, indicates something is not right with the air. That's another right. Doesn't that go along with the pushing?
The vibrato one is weird, because that's another one that can have other issues. So for me, I had my laryngeal tilt was not sufficient. So that's where vibrato comes from, at least I'm pretty sure. When you tilt your larynx, there's an instability and it's not stable, so it kind of oscillates alongside the breath pressure. So for me, because it wasn't tilted that much, I had a bleat. And then I also had trouble getting into my top. And one of the results that happened with that was, because everything I'd ever thought of and learned was like tongue placement for like 10 years. It's literally, that's all Marilyn talked about. That's all my teacher in college talked about. Tongue placement, that's it. That can only get you so far. It's a good thing. It got me singing, kinda, but there's more to it. And that's when I realized, because everyone, even you and Dr. Ye were like, you are totally a light lyric tenor. And when you would hear the melismas, it was hard to argue, because I would like, you know, like most people can't do that. They have to practice that. I never had to practice. I could listen to a recording and then walk in and do it. And I didn't know that was abnormal. So everyone just expected me to have high notes. They just expected me to do that. And I don't.
Okay. You know, and that is okay. It is very much okay to not have what is expected, because
there's a lot of work.
Professionals, that's what they're being selected, and they may all sound very similar.
Yeah,
they're representing a small percentage of people, maybe like 1%. That's not the majority of people that are being represented in the professional world.
Yeah.
You know? I think that's important, to not compare yourself to these professionals, because they're fabulous to listen to. But if you try to sound like them, you can hurt yourself, because everyone is special and unique in their voice. And if you don't think you have a voice, you do. Everyone has a voice that can be worked with.
I mean, who is the woman who did I Need a Hero? Bonnie Tyler, I think was her name. She has a really raspy quality to her voice, because she actually got injured. And so, like, when she came out and she had her breakout tunes of like I Need a Hero and Total Eclipse of the Heart, which I found out was written for Meatloaf, and all of a sudden things make way more sense. But like, she had vocal damage, and now it's like a part of her iconic sound. Now, I'm not saying go full Tom Waits and, you know, drink and smoke your voice into oblivion, because it's probably not a good idea. There can be only so many Tom Waits in the world.
I know.
Yeah. But like, you know, for me, like church choir work, opera chorus work, jazz singing, like, you know, wedding singing, like none of those things need higher than an A natural.
Yeah.
I don't need a high C for everything that I do. Like, there's work to be had, you know, like I think that's, we discussed this once upon a time, where people frame, they don't have any business acumen or marketing acumen. And so when they become a professor, when they teach voice, they only know one path to success, and it is a valid path, is to be the early phenom. Be young, be undeniably fantastic, a vocal prodigy, if you will, and you will find success. And if you don't have that, there is no other option. And that is kind of what is taught, and it puts, if I just had took a marketing class, like, I would have felt way better. Like,
well, I agree with you. Really, there. I mean, I took a marketing class when I did a great program in opera program in Los Angeles, and they had like a little marketing class that went along with it. And it, man, I know that the realities are not really conveyed in the university. And once you get out, it's completely different and opposite of what you think at times. But it's also great because you can be your own navigator. You don't have to follow someone else's path. There are opportunities that presented themselves to me that I could have taken and maybe been very successful. But I didn't feel ready.
Give me 1 second.
I had to fix that, and I didn't feel ready because I needed to fix some issues I was having. Oh, there are opportunities that went past me that current teacher thought, you could still make it. You should still do this even though you think you're not ready. But I didn't want to hurt myself vocally.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hurt myself.
And that's
So
the other thing is that there are a lot, and I won't name names because I don't have anything against anybody who's like struggling. That's
yeah.
God, the opera industry is brutal, kicking people when they're down. But there are a lot of singers, that, I followed their career. When I was a student, I was always following the up and coming tenor, and those folks disappeared. Like over 50% of them don't sing anymore. Like it's not good.
I know. I feel like it's just like, yeah, it's really sad. I feel like people get, I don't want to say they get used, but maybe they just
They
make
do, though.
decisions.
That is what happens.
And that makes me really sad. It makes me very sad for this. It's an industry. It's like that's all I have to say. It's like it's a business. Get used like would in a business. I don't. And me being a singer does not make me a business person. I'm just the product.
Sure, but I think it's business acumen, and I think this pertains to voice types pretty. I think it's hand in hand because again, part of the utility of voice type is marketing. And so if you understand marketing, you can position yourself for other things. You don't have to, and I get a lot of a sense that whenever I see classical singers trying to be industrious, I always see the same thing. They want to start a nonprofit. They want to get grant money. They want to do what is being done. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it doesn't work because some people make that work, but that's hard. It's, to build your own platform, to do all that stuff. You don't necessarily have to do that. For example, one of the things you can do is if you can work audio and video, you can make a cappella videos and send them around to your local church choirs when those open back up. And, you can get a gig that way. And you don't even have to freaking, say hire me. In fact, you don't want to do that. You could just be like, hey, for your congregation, I made a thing, and personalize it, and bam, just do that a bunch.
Great.
And that's email marketing. That's direct to consumer marketing. You don't have to do fancy things. You can get ahead and you can get jobs and you can get work without having to position yourself under an agent that might take advantage of you to push you to do things that you're not vocally ready to do.
That's really smart.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. I've been very cautious, about what I choose to do now, vocally. Back to the whole my trajectory here on what happened with me, struggle between mezzo and contralto. I ended up after I ended up in this new passaggio in my middle voice, flat A flat 4, part of where it broke. I decided I need to see a teacher, maybe a contralto teacher, just to see, or just somebody that deals with more body work. So I sought out the Feldenkrais and worked more on breath support, because I felt like that was something that needed attention. And lo and behold, I stayed with a contralto voice teacher who also was Feldenkrais.
It's a magical combo. It's a really powerful.
It was a magical combo for me, and she realized that I was this voice type. That it was true, that was a contralto. I sounded very similar to her actually, and actually a teacher of mine in my grad school had sung with her in some concerts, and then he told me, and he's like, "Hey, I heard this singer that sounds very similar to you. You should try to take some lessons." And so I ended up doing that. When I was at this impasse, I waited until I could not. I was struggling so much. And so I started working with her on body work. So moving away from the voice and focusing on the body. And my goodness, that was eye-opening. I had an injury to my neck about 10 years ago
I
that
didn't know that.
resurfaced in grad school. So that is another thing that has moved me to this voice type, I think. And that oftentimes happens. You know, I read biographies of singers from the 18th century who so and so fell off their horse and had an injury,
Yeah.
a writing injury, and became this voice type, or they had an illness and switched voice types. So
Yeah.
we're living longer than people did, though, in the 18th century. So, you know, we're going to have more life experiences that will change our voice types. Um, I did this body work, and it really was quite eye-opening. I was able to, with more consistency, out my middle voice. Was able to successfully graduate, and then I just decided I needed to continue working on my technique to reestablish this connection between body and breath.
Mm-hmm.
I find to be really important. And now who a vocal technique teacher who has been very supportive of me being a contralto, and is like and he will say, you know, no, he's not going to say, oh, she's says that I'm a contralto. And he's told me to stick by my guns. I was very timid I had a website, or I have this website. I was very timid to put up contralto, very much, and because I thought I'd be, you know, blacklisted.
Right. That's so, it's so funny that like that gets put out there a lot for particularly for classical music, is that like God forbid you push yourself out there on the internet. Like it's a little scary to put yourself out there. It's also against if you're union, if you're AGMA, there are a lot of constraints in terms of putting music out there on the internet for free for people to consume. If you're AGMA, I don't believe you can put up your recordings and still be in the union. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that's still a thing. Like Joyce,
that's crazy.
Yeah, if you look at American singers, their online marketing content is usually like a podcast. Like that's a very deliberate trend where you can't really, unless it's like from the opera house itself, you won't find smaller US based singers posting recordings of themselves. Doesn't really happen.
Yeah, I did not know that. Wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
and has control over your content like that, you know. And it's just bizarre. I've just decided to embrace this voice type, and that doesn't mean I can sing every contralto role. Like I'm not going to be singing Erda from, you know, I can't remember what that's actually from. Weiche Vulkan. I can't sing that.
Gesundheit.
No, it's not going to be singing Erdas.
Right.
It's heavy. I'm not a heavy voiced singer, a dramatic voice. But I did have somebody tell me, a voice teacher tell me in opera program I did, that I needed to wait in another soprano. She told, who had a sort of a darker voice, she said, I just need to wait. Time will be your friend.
Yeah. I think that's a solution that is totally valid. You know, the idea that you need to be a young, sensational singer is not true at all. Does it help? Yeah, but like most, I remember talking to Angela Mead. I had a weird run-in with her on the plane. For those who don't know, Angela Mead is one of the premier sopranos in the world. It was a really weird happenstance.
Amazing, Rosie.
Yeah, she's fantastic. I think most people at the top of the industry are usually really good people, because like that's why they get hired, is because they're pleasant to work with. So don't be an asshole. Is the moral of that story. But Angela Mead like basically said, like, what happened to me, I made my opera debut at the Met. That's not normal. I fully appreciate that that's not normal. Most of my colleagues had to spend 10 years on the Europe scene or somewhere else before they started getting hired in main roles. Um, you know, like it's a grind. Eric Owens, I think, was almost 50 years old. And you can make the argument that he's a bass baritone and that has validity to it, but he was singing a lot. You just never heard him. Like he didn't break through, but he was getting paid. He was getting decent money. Like there are a lot of people making a living who don't have to be sensational. Anyway, sorry, that's a long tirade to say time. Yes, time. It's great on pasta. You can put it in a sauce, preferably a white wine butter sauce with some fresh thyme.
Yeah, time was my friend, because I was really frustrated. So I waited, and now I'm 35. So like almost 15 years later, now I'm able to come into my own, and now I'm considered too old and to be doing competition like that right when my voice is starting to actually. So that's the hard part about this. They age. They want people very young.
Yeah.
Um, so, and the hard thing about this Fox system is that people, their voices age at different rates, and people might need more time to develop.
Yeah. If there's a
They just,
direct correlation between competition winners by voice type and when they
yeah,
change the date. Like it's noticeable. I was looking at which, like, if you're not a late lyric tenor, what is your chance of being represented at the Met National Council, which is like one of the bigger competitions in all of opera? And the answer is that the second they changed the entry limit from 32 to 30, there's almost no tenors winning other than light lyric. Very few exceptions. The numbers go down. They just drop.
so wrong to me.
Yeah.
That is because I think people are developing later. I just think they are, because maybe they're taking more care of themselves, and they want to have control over their instrument, which they should, and their own vocal health. So they're deciding to do things slowly, which is slow and steady wins the race. In fact, that's something that Joyce DiDonato has said over and over and over. If you
Mhm.
listen to some of her YouTube videos about her career, she says slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah.
I so believe her. And I met her a couple times, and she probably, of course, doesn't remember me, but she told me that she was older when she started. Older being, she had success when she was in her late 20s, and to me, that's still quite young.
Yeah.
Um,
It's very young.
so it's an industry, it's a business. That's what they like. Unfortunately, people could be injuring themselves vocally, to fit in. So you have to take care. Do you want to have your voice forever? Do you want to have it for like 3 years?
Right. I would
So
love to open it up to questions, if that's okay, because I think that you're awesome. And
you.
we got people here who might want to know more about the specifics of your awesomeness. So,
Oh, well, thank
high five.
God. Yes.
um,
Well, one thing I wanted to mention before,
mhm.
the different factors that determine a vocal category: timbre, range, registration, tessitura. This is what I wanted to say.
Right.
Tessitura, this is what my teacher has told me time and time again. Timbre does not define your vocal category, which is largely what people use to define a vocal category: someone's color of the voice, the sound. That is not what determines it. Tessitura does. That means where a singer can comfortably sit for long periods of time in a particular piece of music, say. That is what defines someone's voice type and the transition points. Tessitura is really what I found to be
The most reliable indicator, yeah.
what am I mostly singing consistently.
Yeah.
I've decided what my voice type is based on that.
Yeah. And that can also change depending on genre as well, and like what aesthetic you're going
Mhm.
for.
Right.
So that's why, again, voice classifications generally only apply to classical music. It's
Mm.
the second you get into musical theater and you're talking about a belter, this is a whole different conversation.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So like that's just a different technique.
Right, different.
Yeah. Hold on. I will change your screen real quick. I got a tag here. Okay. Oh no. Becca couldn't hear you. Anyway, Smil, did you have a question? So you unmuted your microphone. Everyone is welcome to unmute their microphone, by the way. It's
Okay. Yeah, I actually did. I was just kind of out of curiosity. With the since you were spending like over a decade playing flute before you really started singing, I wanted to know how that having so much technique with flute playing, how that impacted your journey when you switched over to voice. So I didn't know if like it had to change your breath technique or how, or did it, like, do you think that had any effect on that break in your range?
I don't think it had an effect on the different vocal breaks. That just cured itself with time and really experience. But great question, because this is a really great question, because yes, the breathing affected my singing. In fact, that's something I've been trying to correct for many years, because when you're playing a flute, you're really breathing, in the upper portion of the chest here. It's like a clavicular breath. And you don't need much. And then everything, your embouchure is here. It's your mouth, it's your lips. Well, what is your embouchure when you're singing, right? So it's different. So yeah, I actually, in an audition for grad school, one of the teachers asked me how long I played flute for, because it did transition. In fact, I remember my teacher, Dr. Ye, First University, said I was creating an embouchure when I sang with my mouth, because I had played it's like learning a language. It's like I learned Spanish and it's difficult. It's like learning any language. Sometimes that transitions over to your other language a little bit differently. So it wasn't a smooth transition. Singing, breathing is much lower in the body. So that's why I did have some a while. In fact, my teacher at grad school played Baroque flute, which is even more difficult because there's no embouchure really. It's a piece of wood.
Yeah.
And very hard to play. There's a lot of tension in the face to play that instrument. And she told me that I needed to stop playing flute. That's when I did.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
but it
I
did.
was kind of wondering, yeah, because you just answered my other question, because I was like, yeah, how did that affect your flute playing? And I guess it just kind of ended your flute playing.
Well, I still play. I mean, I can pick up my instrument, and I'm a little rusty. My muscles here will be a little lag. It'll be a little loose, which I want, because for my singing, I want everything to be loose. But I still play. In fact, I took a class through the early music society on Baroque ornamentation. I learned this piece of Baroque music that and I performed it for this early thing. Very easy to pick it up and get back into the swing of things, which I'm very thankful for.
Yeah.
It did have an impact on my breathing. And my teacher was a tuba player. In fact, before he got into a university, got a scholarship to some university, to play tuba, then decided to do voice. I think that's the story. But he said he had a conversation with another vocal clinician regarding wind instrument players and how difficult it is to transition to singing. To have been a wind instrument player and then transition to vocal, very, very difficult, because the breathing mechanism is really, singing is with the whole body from foot to, actually everything should be that way, but with flute holding something out here, so you're in this position, right? So it's one of those things that I should be able to do both effectively, but it's hard.
It's particularly challenging at the highest of levels. Like if you're opera is a genre with a ridiculous skill floor. Like just to do it, I think any art form, the cap there's no cap. Because that's a weird idea, right? Like, but the skill set just to perform opera at a bare minimum is so high that you kind of it becomes a lifestyle, which is why I've become sort of this weird singing hermit that only works at a grocery store for 4 days a week. like there's no other way to do it. Like, you know, I'm trying to make more time for it. So anyway,
I mean, breathing is something really difficult. You have to learn through, and it's just, that's the hardest part is singing, is breathing. I just want to say, yeah, go ahead. I thought I heard somebody say something.
It was Spike. Yeah, Spike, go for it.
Oh, that's okay. I was gonna let you finish.
No. Go ahead. I could go on forever.
All right. Well, first of all, I just want to say I am with Ian on here, and I also think you're great.
Thank you.
But my question was, you said that you took your first vocal lesson at 22, which I think is really cool because that's exactly when I started doing it too. But you said you had like a lot of trouble with your middle voice and getting comfortable in that, and especially with your break and everything, and that the main thing that kind of fixed that for you was just time, and I guess like the body developing like that. But I wanted to ask if you thought that there was anything else that really contributed to it, because I'm sure with all that time, like, you must have been practicing and training it, and if you had to pick something other than just waiting for it to develop like naturally, what would be your advice there?
That's a hard one. I learned to live with this break in my voice, so I used it to my advantage. That's another thing. I ended up thinking, if I just worked heavily in that part of my voice where I had this break, this upper area, that it would go away. No. In yoga or in physical therapy, when there's a part of the body that's injured, do we just tend to it? Do we just rub it and keep trying to hope that it gets better? No. Work on other supporting areas that help support this, right? Say if I'm injured here, I'm going to be working on my lower back. I'm going to be working on my hips, and how do I move my hips when I'm walking? So staying away from that break in the upper area. So upper area for me, D5, F5, E5. I stayed in my middle voice. So that's where I worked, be able to stabilize upper passaggio area, and worked more in stabilizing my middle voice. And then I just, honestly, stopped using human concepts to explain what is happening organically. I firmly do believe that you can over intellectualize and it causes a problem. It's like self-sabotage. So,
oh yeah.
I tell myself all the time. I really got over that. Not got over it. I moved away from that habit by working on opposite areas of the voice. So if I'm struggling with this upper part of my voice, I'm going to work in the middle and the lower voice. I'm going to work in my low chest voice. And I actually did a role in Chicago, a low contralto role, which is like a high tenor role in opera. And I was able to, and I thought, you know what? I can sing pop music in this part of my voice, in this predominantly low chest voice, then I should be able to sing this way too, effectively, without pushing, with ease. So I really firmly believe that if you're having an issue with the upper passaggio, which Ian and I both can agree, we both talked about that a lot in our early days. Like, we obsessed over that.
We were super intense people. Like, I can't even imagine. I became more intense and frankly unpleasant when I went to Temple. Like, if I'm being honest, like, I was just like, I was already an anxious mess. I got, like, add 50% to that. I was undesirable to be around. I was obsessed, and it's not good.
I did. I got mean. I was nasty. I'm sorry to my friends who had to be around me. I was like a mess, but it's also because the way I was being treated, just the environment was just, ugh. That passaggio issue, in a way, gosh, I really want to say that if you're having struggles with a break in your voice, if you're thinking of something that can technically bridge that area, I would say vocal adjustment, adjusting the vowel, if that's the answer you're looking for. Adjusting a vowel as we ascend in our range, the vowel needs to change. The shape of the vowel needs to change. If I'm singing an E vowel in the lower part of my range with ease and clarity, then I can't sing E at the top of my range. I have to open up that vowel. So for me, get through the passaggio area, I work on space between my molars. I realize that I clench up at the top of my voice. So I might work on maintaining some space. I thought space was bad, but I was taught previously to have closed space. From my previous teacher, she had me singing with a closed mouth, which is a soprano. I think a lot of sopranos can. But Dr. Ye, there's another one that had me saying. She would say, "Sing with a ventriloquist mouth." So that's very closed here, but open here, and it works for a lot of people.
Right.
Not everyone. I ended up. My teacher worked on upper passaggio area. I would just say upper area of the voice by opening. So we worked on. We've been working on that for the past year, keeping the space open, keeping that resonance full, and he actually discovered that I was making things very nasal. That's from placement. That's from placing things so high, because I kept thinking it needs to be higher, higher. No. Lower center of gravity. Create a little bit of space.
Yeah. That placement thing, and this is why. So I when I started, I loved the idea. So very emotionally attached to the idea of mask resonance and placing the voice. It was my obsession, because it was all I was taught. It was the only avenue of improvement that I knew for technique. And oh man, it's just, things change. Like resonance changed, where you feel if you try to force a sensation, you're probably doing it wrong, to be honest with you. Like, is it coming out comfortably? That's really the only criteria that you have. Like, is it coming out comfortably? And if you think it is, but you're still having trouble, it's probably not comfortable enough. You mentioned body work. Like, that's when I made improvement, was body work.
I agree. Oh my God. And that has to do with changing your nervous system. I did a presentation for UC Berkeley voice students a couple weeks ago on Feldenkrais and body work and exercises you get. Your mind, really. You have to be able to calm that nervous system down to be able to sing well. If you're constantly anxious, which is just, that's going to happen when you're in school regardless. You're going to be anxious, because you got papers to write, concerts. When you calm that nervous system down, things start to happen organically. And what you want to have happen is the organic learning process happen. Body knows how to heal itself. For a long time, it's like putting on a shoe that's too small. If you're wearing I'm a size 8.5, and if I'm putting on a size 7 shoe, that's not going to fit. I can shove my foot into that shoe and make it fit.
Yeah.
I can make myself sound a certain way.
Give me one moment.
Is that healthy? No. Many paths to God, as my teacher, who I did not agree with, said. She even agreed there are many paths to God, and there's many paths to this field. And I think that language is really important. The language you use when you teach is important. And I think I think vocal teaching is changing. I think people are changing the way they teach. Body work has been really helpful for me. Maybe not for other people, but helpful for Ian as well.
Yeah.
It gets that focus off of the human conceptualizing. In fact, I sometimes think that vocal pedagogy is not healthy for people. I love it. I love reading about it. But conceptualizing brings all the focus to the face. You're thinking, sometimes you're breathing even even gets heightened.
Stifled. Yeah,
I was doing
absolutely.
physical therapy from my injury. Even my physical therapist, this is a physical therapist, has nothing to do with singing, but she said when you're thinking and studying or reading something, you have just the skin on your face is going to become tense. Tension begins at the level of the skin, even. Skin can become tight. That can also transition to muscle tightness. Anyways, singing, it's I had a great analogy that Dr. Ye used was pretend that you're a dummy or like a puppet, like your mouth is hanging and on a hinge.
Yeah.
That's the type of looseness you need for the jaw. It's really loose.
But then also not pulling everything down while you're doing that, which is another
Exactly.
challenge because that's a different cup of tea. Danny,
And
I'm
that's
going to. My wife called me for a moment, so I'm going to go address that. If you could, if are you okay with just answering questions?
yeah, of
It's
course.
a nice group of people, I promise.
Okay, yeah, go right ahead. Whoever wants to ask something, anything.
All right, I'm going to mute myself.
Hey there, I'm asking on behalf of on Twyla, and I think yeah, I'm not sure if you're what do I want to say? Your participation here is basically, just limited to today. But I think Twyla was asking um, if she could. I'm sorry, I don't know if he or she. If we can send you recordings like they sent to Lesage, or if that's not what your intent is on participating female. Okay, so she wanted to know if she could send you recordings, or because we
Recording.
do send them of singing.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to hear people's voices. Yeah.
And I guess if that's the case, we would need to know how to do that.
I'll figure out how to do that. I'm really bad at social media, so
Okay.
maybe like through I don't know how would I maybe ask Ian how to do that. However he does it, I guess I'll do it the way he does it.
Yeah, because I think for him, I mean, I know people DM him on all sorts of social media platforms, but here on the Discord, I think a lot of people will post like private YouTube links where you have to have the link to access the recording.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to listen to people. Are they wanting my feedback or my I assume that they want my feedback regarding.
Yeah, I think that's correct me if I'm wrong, Twilight, that you're looking for feedback on those recordings. Because I think that's right.
Okay. Yeah, I mean I think that's fine. Yeah. Again, my expertise is limited to classical singing. I am happy to listen to people singing their genres. One thing about classical singing is that we could talk about that another time, but the refinement that goes along with the singing is very stressful. So excessive use of chest voice, for example, in classical singing, open chest voice like belting is not acceptable in my genre. But that doesn't mean I can't listen to that in other genres with an open mind. So but it's acceptable. I'm totally fine with.
Cool. And I think she just said she wants to know everything that can help, so that way it doesn't end up injuring her voice. Anytime throughout. Yeah, because I can think that, especially trying to do more of a pop style, you're more apt to injure your voice if you're trying, like you're saying, to belt out stuff all the time.
Yeah, it's really, really easy to do that. I mean, you can injure your voice singing classical. You can injure your voice singing in the wrong vocal fach or vocal type. I almost did that through grad school. I felt like I was injuring myself or getting close to developing issues because I was singing wrong repertoire. So of course, yeah, that's totally something that can happen. I'm singing pop music. A lot of times, pop music, most treble voices in pop music are so they sing in the middle of the voice. So there's only some exceptions. Like, I mean, there are exceptions. There's like Mariah Carey has like what I can't even
some absurd like six, like as much as like 6 octaves or something nuts.
Yeah, I think it's 6. That sounds right.
Yeah.
got a huge range. She's like Jesse Norman of pop music because she has this wide range. You can sing everything. She can low stuff that would contralto sing to high stuff to soprano sing. I don't know what I would classify her. That's somebody that, again,
That's the thing with like, you know, there's a great meme for anybody interested. There's something called a vocal Fach generator. I don't know. Have you ever seen this one, Danny?
I think I have.
It's like a website where they just combine a bunch of different adjectives with a bunch of different Fach terms, and it's hilarious because it's so true. Like I'm a lyric hero, or like what was the one was? I'm a heroic tenor with a lower extension and a lyric quality. Like, you know, it's just like it randomizes it, and it's perfect. It's exact like, because it's such a square peg round hole situation.
Oh God!
Almost every time. I don't know if I've met a handful of sopranos for whom they walk into a voice classification, you're like, yeah, this makes sense. But it's actually like a minority of the people that I've met that just like comfortably fit into a Fach or voice type, however you want to do it. Like there's always going to be a weird thing. Like,
well, there is, you know. Oh yeah, I have in one of my vocal pedagogy books here, the Richard Miller's classification, where it's like he shows the scale for soprano, mezzo, and contralto, and how like each note, or you know, which each part, each range, and what that is. You know, lower, middle, etc. And I remember just obsessing over that for so many years. And my teacher finally said, "Danny, you need to stop looking at that.
Put the book down."
Put the book down.
Can I just same?
He is really, I love him because he just tells me, you know, you need to just stop obsessing about these, and I obsess about it just like you, and I still obsess about it.
Yeah, right.
The difference, I'm a little bit calmer in how I go about things. You know, sing what you can sing. Don't sing what you can't sing. Your body will tell you, you know, what it works and what doesn't.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is that like one of the remedies for the obsession that I think that Danny and I are talking about, there are a lot of things that could cause that obsession. For me, it was like a lot of fear of like being able to do this thing. And I don't even think I had a definition of like what doing it was. Like I think like I was like, I just want to make it. But like, at what threshold do you make it? And so then it became, I want to make a living at it. And okay, well that's a lot more reasonable. You know, and so it's that for me, a lot of it tied to professional anxieties. But then also wanting it to do it the right way, like all my heroes. And I don't know how that played into it, but it played into it.
I wanted to sound like, you know, Reinhard Lieberson, who Mezzo, who died tragically at age 52. And actually, Marilyn was friends with her, and she knew her. They studied with the same voice teacher, and she was this very famous mezzo soprano. Had this ethereal quality to the voice that really speaks in particular parts of the voice. You know, can convey emotion in the lower parts of the voice. And I could not sing her the same rep as this woman. You know, certain roles were created for her, like John Arbison composed the opera The Great Gatsby, and the role of Myrtle was composed for Lorraine Hunt, and my teacher had me work on her aria in grad school. I just couldn't do it. I could not kick it. I worked on it and worked on it,
right.
And I could not sing it because it sat at D5, E6, D5, E5, just sat there sustained pitches on the upper passaggio, and I wasn't cracking there. It was just uncomfortable as hell.
Yeah, that's a thing that like Mozart does this a lot to singers, where you have to sustain these unrealistically high things. Like on one hand, it's a great technical challenge and it's very informative, but on the other hand, Mozart's an asshole. Like it, it's so brutal. I released a recording of my brutalizing of Un'Aura Amorosa, and this is something that singers do all too often. We often put out what we are struggling with instead of what we can do well. And we do that even in auditions because we have this mindset of I want to work on it, I want to get better. So we pick repertoire that's our weakness, so that we do that. But then when we don't, like, you need some rep that's a winner for you. Like Song to the Moon for Renee Fleming is like, I heard her do it live and I was like just smitten. She actually, because I saw her later in her career, she was having trouble with some of the rest of the opera. Like, and it wasn't subtle. I love Renee Fleming. It was one of her last gigs. The melismatic passages, the really quick passages, were just not there that night. But I don't even care because Song to the Moon was so good. The person I went with, who I was dating at the time, just was sobbing, like hysterically. And I didn't even know sound that beautiful could exist on this planet. I was flabbergasted. I was floored. It was a song that made her famous and is so good for her and her voice that she can sing it at the tail end of her career. And that's what put her there. Sorry, continue, Danny.
Amazing. I know she was one of my favorites when I was getting into listening to her. I sang some of I tried to sing the aria "Oh Sleep, Why Dost Thou Leave Me" from Handel's Senile. It was on her Handel album, because she just could sing. She can sing anything really, really well. Her line is fabulous, and the color of the voice is fabulous. It's just, fantastic voice.
Yes.
Dignity and grace.
Were there any
Question?
Yes, absolutely. I was just
So-
about to go there.
Yeah, good. Okay, so I think and this isn't necessarily for me, but I think this is a general question. So, and I think you touched on this earlier, Lesage, about like this obsession to try to classify your voice, and part of that reason being like trying to find the repertoire of what you should be singing. So instead of, I can see how it'd be healthy to try to get away from that and try to obsess, what is my voice. But what advice would you have otherwise about trying to find the songs that you should be singing?
That's a great question.
Well, it's a lot of trial and error. A lot of what I've done is I've gone to art songs, which are smaller songs in comparison to arias. They're not as, they might, can be dramatic, and they vary from dramatic quality. I've gone to art songs to find what works for me because a lot of them can be transposed, meaning they can move up and down. I mean, they can transpose key. So, Chanson, Piste by Du Parc isn't working for me in this one particular key. I can lower it a whole step or a third to find what works. Really, that's what happened actually in my master's recital. I couldn't sing the repertoire I chose because not that I couldn't sing it, but it was a struggle. Like, it was apparent that this is not the part of my voice that was friendly. So my accompanist, who's fantastic, just he's like, not going to say anything. He just didn't say anything. He's just like, hold on a minute. Transposed it down a half step, went on and singing. I went on to sing it, and it was like, wow, that just solved everything.
Yeah.
So half step makes a difference.
Yeah.
Really have to just play with that. How to know the repertoire, though, that's another thing. I just did a lot of my own research early on. I listened to stuff. Backwoods CDs were a thing. I go to the library, and there were CDs there that had, that were had classical vocal singers on it. So I did a lot of my own research, formed myself that way.
I think to kind of it's going to be an unsatisfying answer. You need to sing a shit ton of music and see what works. I just don't think, and make mistakes and figure it out that way. And guess what? Unfortunately, the voice changes. So like, you're not looking for what specifically is comfortable, but you're looking for like, what can I do with this percentage of success rate? Right? And like, when you're live performing, you know, for me at where I'm at right now, I know that like there's a 95 or 99% chance I'm not gonna screw up like a G. Like it's probably gonna come out. That's as good as it gets. Like you'll never have 100, you know, Pavarotti and Bergonzi and all these amazingly famous singers have absolutely cracked on high notes during live performances. You can't help but do it. You're gonna screw up.
Yeah.
On the biggest of
You're
stages.
Gonna screw up. One of the greatest pieces of advice I got was dare to suck.
Yeah.
You know, dare to suck. Be the worst the worst possible image of yourself that you can be. Like, and see what happens. What are you afraid of? That you're gonna suck? Okay, then do that.
Right.
Do that. Don't really flood yourself, and just it's really hard. It's one of those things that Ian said you're not gonna have to learn by experience. Experience in front of an audience is the best. Unfortunately, that's not possible at times, but that is what I've craved, is that type of experience. Lesson experience is great. I'm having a virtual lesson with my teacher tomorrow, but it's not the same, you know, as being in front of an audience. That's the goal.
Yeah, and that's something I would challenge everyone here to do. Like, do not underestimate the power of performing music for people in terms of like the benefits it can provide. So I would encourage everyone here, like, you know, senior citizens in the United States are having a really hard time of it right now. They can't have visitors. They're alone. There are a bunch of programs set up so that you can, like, you know, virtually call some of these senior citizens and you can sing for them. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing to do. And guess what? They don't give a shit if you screw up. Because, like, just pick a song that's good, that you like, and if you screw it up, they don't even care. You know? They're not talking to anybody. So it's one of those things, like, go where you're needed. And this is one of the things that makes opera so dejecting, is that there's a lot of singers. Not all of them are really needed. And, you know, you can try and bang your head on that as much as you can. And every now and then you're going to get a really nice paying gig from it. Because when you do get opera gigs, boy, oh boy, are they nice. They're usually a fat paycheck. But they happen like once a year. You know, some people are luckier to get them more often. But that's not the case for most people. So, you know, go where you're needed. And set yourself up in a situation where it's going, you know, if you set yourself up in a situation where you cannot fail, you're probably going to screw up. Like, that's the situation where you're most likely to screw it up, right? So don't set yourself up for failure. Go where the wins are. And
the more you put yourself out there, the more people are going to have to say about you. And yeah, some of that's going to be negative and petty. You know, it's gonna happen. Just the nature of the internet, the nature of trolling and all that.
Yeah.
Yes, it's gonna happen. You know, you're gonna get people that are either feeling threatened by your ability, or they just see something in themselves is reflected when they listen to it, not like it. Again, that has to do with them, not you. And those people, they're listening with the intent. They're listening for errors. They're listening for that, not looking at the bigger picture.
And
so stay away from those people.
Yeah, absolutely stay away from those people. Or go in, you have to go in with the attitude, if you're going to be in front of those people, you have to go in with the attitude that you don't need them. Because you don't, is the honest truth. Your voice is not for everybody. What you have to offer is not for everybody. And that's good, because that means like you're like Rocky Road ice cream. You're delicious, but some people like vanilla. You know?
I do, and I have had so many different people. I mean, here's an example. I'm coaching with my accompanist before this whole virus thing broke out, because I was planning on doing an audition. It was the first thing I had done since I had this injury to my neck, so I was really excited to get back into things. And I hadn't worked with him in maybe 2 years, and or maybe a year and a half. And he listened to me, and he's like, "Wow, your voice has changed. It sounds so much more relaxed. You sound, it sounds full, but then with that clarity and that ping, it being forced." And that was one of the greatest compliments, just by a nice accompanist friend of mine. And then his wife came in the room, and she was like, she's like, "I was listening out there," and she's like, "Why are you not professional? Or why are you not?" She's like, "You really need to be singing." I said, I wish that, but unfortunately, the way that the system works, it's not, may not be the outcome of it all.
Yeah.
But then again, I can have an interaction with another teacher, and they can tell me how horrible I sounded 2 years ago, and they just, fixating on that. So it's really like one person's going to think you're amazing, the next person's going to not think you're good at all. I mean, it can vary, and that's hard, and you have to be ready for that.
Yeah. So just to kind of recontextualize the question, like I know we talked about like what is right for the voice, like physically, individually, and then we moved on to talk about like what is right for you to sing for other people. It is hard to remove the two. I think it should be hard to remove the two of like what is good for you and what is good for other people, because I think singing is a beautiful thing, and even if you don't aspire to make a living from it, it is way, way, way more meaningful to be a singer, even as a hobbyist, when you are serving other people. When you feel needed for a thing that you were working really hard on, it is good for your mental health. Like, it's good for you. It's good for your learning. And you should have the opportunity as a singer to experience the power of like really helping somebody. Because for me, there's been a couple of times where I thought I sucked. Like, I bombed, and people were like, "I needed that," and I was like, "Really?"
I
It's
think of being service to other people is so important, because this field can be so self-centered and me, like focusing. Not that anybody's selfish, but it's so focused
Yeah.
that it can draw the attention away what the music is actually trying, which is to serve others, and that is what music.
Yeah, it is 2 thumbs up. That is high five. That is 10. I'm going to put it in the text. It's 10 out of 10. That is the 10 out of 10 quote.
Yeah, it's to serve other people. It's hard. It's really, that's the whole paradigm of this whole thing, is that maybe you're stuck. So a lot of times people get stuck in their singing. They hit a roadblock, and it can really just sit there, stay there. And for me, for a long time, it was that secondo pizzaccio. It was just crazy. Why do I have this falsetto in my voice? I'm not supposed to have a falsetto. Right. I'm not supposed to, but I do. And it taking that focus away from that on other things, serving other people with song is so much more important than the one break that somebody's going to hear and forget, because it happens and it's gone.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Of course there's going to be mistakes that you make, friends. That it's 1 second. And then another thing to think of is practicing. How are you practicing? Are you practicing something over and over and over again? in reality and performance, that note is going to come and go in 1 second. That last 2 or 3, or maybe it's the last 2 or 3 beats. You know?
Yeah.
So that's something I had a countertenor friend, and we were singing the same songs for our recitals. We were singing Chanson T, Debussy, and it's hard for a lower voice. And Debussy is hard to transpose, so it's not something that is easy.
Yeah.
So we had to sing the same E5, the same vowel. And then we were thinking, why is this so hard? And then I said, well, we're only singing this in concert, we sing it once. Here we are practicing it for hours. I think there's the issue.
Right. Like at a certain point, and this is the benefit of picking repertoire that's a good fit for you, like pretty much right off the bat.
Right.
Is you can pick it up and you can go help someone, and then you can spend more time finding another piece that really works for you, instead of hammering a piece that doesn't work for you. Find the ones that do, and you'll be able to help a lot more people, and you'll feel more encouraged, and you're still working on your singing. Like there's a lot of benefits. I think maybe 1 out of every 5 tunes, and this is me framing it totally from like how music was assigned in college. It was like, you had 5 pieces of repertoire or whatever. Like I think one out of every 5, and this is an arbitrary number, could be like a technically challenging piece that you're working on, right? But like
one of the greatest things I did in grad school, my first semester, I worked with the teacher I'm currently working with now. He was filling in the other teacher I was staying with, but we worked on old repertoire. Worked on stuff that I may have halfway learned. We just, why learn new stuff and focus on stress and anxiety this first semester? Work on something maybe you already have done, and find new ways of learning it. Another thing is you have to be able to challenge yourself. You have to be able to, in this vocal technique of bel canto singing, you have to be able to extend parts of your range or dramatic intensity. And so being able to challenge yourself and sing things that are difficult is also very healthy. That's something I'm trying to break into, is expanding my repertoire within my vocal category.
I've been, yeah. I think that it's maybe a succinct way to kind of wrap up a couple of things that have been said is that the approach should be holistic.
Yes.
Like you should be challenging yourself in the areas you're not. And then kind of you're never going to hit on everything. It's like no one has 16 hours a day to spend being a purist artist unless you come for money. We won't open that can of worms. That doesn't exist in opera. What? Pay to win?
I know.
But so kind of back to your question about what do you choose the stuff. I think majority of the time you choose the stuff that works for you right now, and you go out and you serve other people, and then be selfish on the occasion and pick something that is a personal challenge for you, because that can totally be rewarding. But if it's all you're doing, that's not good either.
Right.
So
I would say technically, if you're looking for a technical answer, find music that's fits in the middle of your range, and middle, or whatever is comfortable, but stick with the middle of the range where you can express the text effectively. If you're struggling with diction and being able to enunciate, then that's an indicator that the repertoire is not a good fit in that particular key. So that's probably a technical approach.
And this is actually very specific to Smil, because I know that she reads music, and to anyone who either is comfortable with harmonies or can read music, I have found that doing a cappella recordings has given me the best of all worlds, because I practice pretty much every part of my range because I'm singing multiple parts. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. you know, and I have a looper and all that stuff, but you know, Audacity is free. And you can use a shitty mic, you know, it's fine. It's practice. Like, just layer your voice, and you can work on so much that way. Like, I hated choir until I'm such a tenor. What is about to come out of my mouth is the most tenor thing I'm going to say for the next month. I will outdo it the following month, but for this month, this is the most tenor statement. I love choir when it's all me. When it is only me. I am the greatest. I am a tenor. Anyway. But it's rewarding because you're responsible for literally everything when you do a choir cover, and it's all you. So there's no excuses.
No, that's a great thing to put out there.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say about the to end about the contralto voice and why it was such taboo that I chose it was because when you look at the vocal classification, there's a lot of different types of sopranos and subcategories of soprano, tenor, baritones, and some basses. For mezzo and for contralto, there aren't very many. So for mezzo, there's coloratura, lyric, and dramatic, and for contralto, it's just like contralto.
Yeah.
So there wasn't there wasn't any subcategory, and it took me reading these articles by vocal teacher David Jones, who I showed you these articles. And he talked about how the contralto voice type, there's many different types of voice subcategory within it. And then I felt like I was at home when I read about the different characteristics. I was like, oh my God, this is me.
Yeah.
And then I remember maybe you were a little skeptical. It's always good to be skeptical.
Well, I think that for me and for a lot of people, when like, it's always like someone who's a student throws the word dramatic or contralto, the knee-jerk reaction, or bass, you know, the knee-jerk reaction is to be like, probably not, because it is probably not true, but it could be. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's one of those things where at the point that you're at, you've had over a decade to build a relationship with your voice, and you understand what it can and cannot do at this point very intimately. And
very intimate.
Yeah.
It was interesting because when I was in undergrad, a couple times I would sing for recitals for other people. My mom just happened to go to one of my friends' recitals, Heather Rice. You remember?
Yeah.
I sang a duet with her, and one of the composer teachers there, Dr. Burnham, who's composed. He composed for one of the dramatic sopranos that sings at the Met, and I can't remember. But in 2009, this dramatic soprano came and composed her, and she sang it with the North State Symphony.
Wow.
So he's done quite a bit. Apparently, my mom was sitting next to him during this concert I was singing at, this recital, and I started singing. He said contralto. My mom said that to me. She's like, he went back on his seat and his eyes were opened really wide. And so I was like, really? And it actually was something where that was one of the first times I thought, that's what I am, because he heard a quality I didn't hear at my age, that what could be. And then another teacher of mine, I did some arias with the band that were arranged for band ensemble. And he was a band director, Dr. Tevis, and he told me, I asked him, do you think I'm a mezzo soprano? Because I was struggling. And he's like, I don't think. He just shook his head. No, I don't think you will be.
Yeah.
And there's nothing. It wasn't sad. I was struggling because I was just struggling with because I couldn't complete or fulfill my obligations as a mezzo soprano. Which meant high notes.
It's so interesting how the emotional attachment gets into this, right? Because it totally happened to me too. Like, you are disappointed. This is so messed up, and I'm saying this because I did it too. You're saying you were letting down the idea of being a mezzo soprano, and that was emotionally charged for you. Like the fact that voice classification becomes like existential is a problem. It diverts you from the truth, which is it's your voice, damn it. Like,
yeah.
So
I was supposed to sing all these things, you know, the Octavian and Sesto and stuff that I tried to do it, it just didn't work. And it was such an indicator that maybe I was different. And my voice teacher, when Dr. A left, Weiss, she told me she was using, at the time, male vocal exercises on my voice. So Richard Miller, male vocal exercises on my voice. And she says, I think you're different. And there's nothing wrong with being different.
Right.
But I can't use mezzo ones on you.
Right.
I can use effectively the tenor ones on your voice. So the baritone, it was either tenor or baritone. So that was an indicator that things were a little different. Somebody also thought I was a dramatic soprano, that I was going to one day be a dramatic soprano. I had a vocal coach tell me that, and I just was like, what?
Right.
That was not, and obviously that's not the case.
That can be, those are dangerous. That can be like a run to the hills or a run for the hills kind of moment sometimes.
That was maybe perhaps negligent on their part, but that maybe hopefulness and just somebody trying to be nice, but it can be really, and I kind of stayed away from anything that was extreme, you know, on purpose. I wanted to have my voice go out.
This is one of those things where, in terms of like finding a good voice teacher, I think the best way to know if the teacher you're with is right for you, and this includes literally everybody here, because like as much as I love Marilyn, there was a point where she was not the right teacher for me, right? So like, that's always the weird part, is like you get emotionally attached to your teacher. But if you can be friends with them, you don't have to pay them. Like you can be emotionally attached and be on great terms, and you don't have to pay them. But if you're paying money, what should be happening is that you pay money and they cover a thing and they give you work to take home. And if you do that work for like a few weeks, singing should be easier. Like, and if it's not, there's your sign. Like, I don't know if I hesitate with like a number. I say a few weeks. Honestly, it depends on the problem. Like I needed months with my Alexander teacher because my body was so messed up from Pilates. So
I needed about 3 months, but then when I did my recital, of course my teacher at the time she thought my voice was too throaty, but then everyone else didn't think that. But I felt a more release in my body. So it went from being like really tight to just being open and being able to have healthy vibrato. I was singing with straight tone for a long time. I remember singing Bianca in Rape of Lucretia by Britten.
That piece has not aged well.
High Fs, the F5s, straight tone, because I couldn't do it without, that was the only way I could control the dramatic intensity of my vibrato at that part in my voice. My vibrato was faster in higher parts of my voice.
Oh.
So, you know, it's just, everyone's voice is different. But I used a lot of straight tone because of that. I was told that my voice, that vibrato, was unattractive. I did unhealthy things to combat other things, and that wasn't right. So it really does, straight tone also only to be used healthfully as a painting. It's like a color that you're adding, not to be used as a technique.
Right.
Unfortunately, the Baroque repertoire uses a lot of that.
There is, just as a sort of asterisk and a caveat, and this is not coming from me, more of a quote from somebody else that teaches belting and stuff like that. There is a way, apparently, I don't know how, but there is a way to belt. There is a way to do straight tone belt, and have it be healthy. It's just really, really risky. In the same way that singing over an orchestra without a microphone is risky, and also, can we just say insane? Like, it's 2020. We don't really.
Well, think about it, Ian. Back in Mozart's time, and back in the time where we would be singing these arias, where would we be singing them?
Small.
I've heard that the stage for a Baroque opera was small.
If you've ever been to the houses in Europe, they're so tiny. Like,
Tiny,
Americans are true to form on their opera houses. They're absurd. They're giant caves, like with 3,000, like, 4,000 seats. It's nuts.
I've heard Baroque operas done on San Francisco Opera Stage. I don't like them. It doesn't sound like that's where it's supposed to be. It's not so intimate. Baroque opera is such an intimate experience because of the imperfection. Actually, I believe I'm right when Baroque comes from a Portuguese word which means like black pearl or pearl. I have to look that up, but it's uneven. I think there's some unevenness in it. The bows, bowing, instrument in the Baroque time, everything was uneven because the bows were uneven. I mean, it's just imperfection was embraced. Things were going in and out of tune on a regular basis. We didn't have air conditioning to keep the Baroque instruments tuned at 415 consistently.
Yeah.
I mean, the conditions were different. They were rugged. I mean,
that's true of opera's history in general. Opera's in such a weird place right now where it's like this. It's people. I blame Wagner. Put it on a pedestal, and like people are have this unhealthy reverence where they don't even they're not even listening. Right? Like, how many Marriage of Figaro is hilarious. I think it's aged really well. It's a hilarious opera. It's well written, both in terms of the score. Mozart wasn't bad, so I hear. But then also, like, the text is actually hilarious. It's a funny play, and it was a play before he wrote the opera. It was a book. It was really funny. And I go to Santa Fe, and I listen to all these people, like, they're just like, gorgeous. Like, he's singing about farts. What are you talking about? Like, you know, like, this is a menage a trois that's going on. It's a love triangle, and everyone's just like, oh. It's infuriating to watch because it's disrespectful to the art form. You stop paying attention because you superimpose stuff on it.
It's so hard. I know everything is supersized here, you know, but everything, you know, that's why I love Baroque repertoire. It's opera seria and serious opera versus opera buffo. I mean, I love Mozart. I think it's hilarious. I do think he's hilarious. I think the scene where Cherubino's hiding from the Count and Basilio's in there, I remember we did that. That's so funny. That was so hilarious. That's the best scene. It's just hilarious. You're laughing through it. You're having fun. Opera seria is more serious, and I do love that as well because it's the capo aria form, ABA prime, focuses on a single emotion. So A section focuses, say I'm singing a sad song, it's sad. B section, which is different from the A, it's in the relative, might be in the relative minor of the key, will focus on a different emotion. Maybe something has shifted in their thinking. And in the return of A, you infuse your ornamentation, how you ornament or change the aria, how it's written, is infused with those ideas from the B section.
And that,
so I love art form for that reason, that with the freedom for composing. I love being able to do that, to compose your own ornamentation. Mozart doesn't allow.
Yes, right. So I want to. There's so much brilliant stuff that you just said there. One, the fact that you are passionate about Baroque music, and that is something that you like. We talked about technically finding the things that work for you, but also artistically finding the things that work for you. Once you are passionate about a thing, and you feel comfortable singing it, that's when going out and singing for other people is going to be huge, because you're going to love the music, and that's going to come across. And then the other thing I loved what you said is that, you know, there's a space for things. And Baroque doesn't fit in 3,000 seat theaters. The first time I heard Lawrence Bradley, I heard him at Santa Fe. I was so unimpressed. One, I think he had a bad night. He still hit the high F because, you know, he's weird like that and he does that. Like, hard not to be a little angry and jealous of that guy.
He's
Like,
superhuman.
he's superhuman. He was a little stiff. He was struggling, but it all came out, and he did his job, and I respected that. But that was my only reference point. And then I saw him again in a more. It was a bigger space. It was a rather large church in Philadelphia, but I had sat down and I heard him sing in this smaller space, and holy crap! That was a much better space for him because Santa Fe is very large. And it's an outdoor theater, so the acoustics are not like, it's good acoustics, but it's not entirely favorable for a voice of that size.
Right.
But that smaller space, you got everything, all the color of every different part of his range, which doesn't travel in the bigger spaces for even the larger voice types. You got all of this lush sound that you hear on the recordings, and way more overtones that you always miss during the recordings because the mic is too close. And then, like, he did all of the crazy gymnastics. Like, I was floored. He's so good. And it was in that space that I could appreciate that.
I just watched him, listened to him do a podcast or an interview with Janae Bridges, this new mezzo, who's fucking amazing. I'm just loving her. Janae Bridges, and they did a podcast, and he talked about how they were talking about how he is fluent in like all of the Romance languages. So he's done his work. Like he's put so much work in. He worked his butt off to be in this field, and he's done everything. So people can't say anything bad about this guy because he's just so amazing.
And
you know?
and like how many opportunities, and he talks about this in his interview with Opera Magazine. You know, when he was coming up, first of all, I think we just have to say it. Opera is racist as fudgesicles.
Racist and sexist.
As it's every problem, every social problem that you could possibly put on, Opera's guilty of it. Obviously, it is not exclusive to opera, but opera has a lot of work to do because the fact that in, 2007 or 2006, like not that long ago, Lawrence Brownlee was told that he should focus on Porgy and Bess, and that's it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, right? Like,
what the hell?
So for those who are not aware, Porgy and Bess is it was written by Gershwin, and Gershwin, the family, still owns the rights to Porgy and Bess, and it is very specific that it has to be an all-black cast. People have tried in the past to put on the production where that is not the case, and it's been a battle. It is, and historically has been one of the only performance opportunities for black singers. It is very hard for a black singer to break through and get work outside of Porgy and Bess in the opera world. And Lawrence Brownlee in 2006 was told to his face that he should just focus on Porgy and Bess. This incredible freak talent that we're worshiping and obsessing over was told he should put himself in a box and never sing. Like, so, yeah. Anyway, sorry, long rant on that.
No, it's infuriating because imagine like what people experienced for that, you know, but if he's experiencing that in 2007, what were people experiencing in like the 70s and 80s when there was, you know, Jesse Norman, Etienne Price, Kathleen Battle, you know, there's just, I mean, I think I met one of the very first African Americans at tenor, George Shirley or George Shipley. I can't remember. Oh, it's so bad of me to not remember his name. Shirley, I think. And I was amazing. I was just like, oh, like nice to meet you. I had an opportunity to study with Myra Merritt, African American, who sang at the Met. Ohio, she at a school, and she was teaching in Ohio, and I didn't go to that school, which because they weren't focusing on early music, and
Right.
I'm just like, what would have my life been? I ended up going somewhere where they focused predominantly on early music, and I often think, where would my life have been if I'd studied with men at school, and just to think what they experienced back then. I think Marian Anderson, the very first African American
Yeah.
contralto to sing. She sang one role at the Met, and I want to know if she sang at the believe the inauguration of K. Am I right about?
I don't know. My history is lacking.
Yeah, my opera history of 30s 40s is lacking.
Yeah, I the golden era, with like Pavarotti and all that, and then more recent. That's pretty much where I think
Yeah, right, that's kind of where I'm at too.
yeah.
I'm
The
15
I think
Jesse.
this could go back to like what we were saying about Lawrence Brownlee and him being told something that like demeaning. Going back to finding where you can serve people, because this is a singer of such extraordinary ability that it wasn't hard for that man to enter. Like, if I recall, like he had to go through Chicago Lyric. The Met wouldn't take him at first, and he had to go through the Chicago Lyric. That's not an uncommon scenario. That might not be him. I might be mixing that up. But like, if someone doesn't like you, move on. Like, don't if you love something and it's working for you artistically and vocally, and you'll know that better than almost anybody. Find where that's appreciated.
He's appreciated. My goodness, people love him, and he's mesmerizing. And I would love to see him live, singing anything.
It's a treat. Yeah, it's definitely a treat.
Favorite tenor. I like Juan Diego, but I really, really like Lauren.
It took me a while
respect-
to because like what I heard from Lawrence Brownlee's singing was the antithesis of what I thought was good technique, and what I was being taught at the time. It turns out what I was being taught was wrong.
Yeah.
It's also, the recordings are so deceptive. He doesn't sound like what you hear in the recordings. He sounds like he almost over darkens. Not true at all. Like Renee Fleming kind of has that in recordings as well, where it almost sounds contrived. You don't get that impression live at all. Like not even remotely close.
I've heard her live at UC Hertz Hall. She definitely doesn't sound like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing. How you sound on a recording is different than how you hear yourself.
It's different from how other people hear you too. That's because like one of the things I always say is like you should record yourself.
You should, and
you should.
I was against this. I hated listening to hated it. Absolutely hated it. Only did it when I had to, which is horrible.
Yeah.
You should always be able to listen to yourself. But I'd been doing it recently because a contralto friend of mine told me, no, she's like Danielle, you need to listen to yourself because your voice is what you hear as being light, even when you think you're singing with clarity, is still dark. So, and that's that means to me, if I'm singing with with ease, if I'm singing a vocal ease or an exercise with ease, I'm hearing it back to me differently. It's like, yeah, that's good. It needs to be that way. You don't want to hear exactly what you're hearing in your head, which is your thing.
Yeah.
And I heard my recording of my vocalies, because I said, wow, I am really trying to be clear. My friend's like, no, you have a dark voice. Like, no matter, you can't take that out of your voice. The clarity, that chiaroscuro, right,
dark and bright. Chiaroscuro.
At the same time. Yeah, which is crazy. And I'm like, what am I listening to? But I finally was able to sit down and listen and give myself criticism. And that has been so valuable in this time of virus. Really give myself permission into
Sorry, the mic wasn't picking you up in that last sentence. Can you repeat that?
oh, being able to listen to yourself and with non-judgmental ears, and just really listening to what is happening, vocalizing 3-note pattern, 5-note pattern.
And that's something that, because like, you know, we got a bunch of students listening in, that's something I actually will maybe take one more question, but I almost want to end on that note. The song of the word of the day challenge, like I know when I review everyone singing, I get critical and I tell you to go work on stuff, and that's not conducive to singing a song a day. But like there is a lot of validity to just recording your voice, just singing music, and just putting it in the Discord. I've told you time and time again, if anyone gets offensive, I'm just going to ban them. Like, if you have a problem with how someone is talking about your singing, if they're being an asshole, you let me or one of the mods know, and they're just gonna get kicked, possibly banned. You know, they might get a warning, depends on the context. But like, yeah, you're protected here. Everyone's super nice, as everyone in here has sort of been able to experience when each other's presence. So yeah, everyone's super nice. Everyone, just do it. Just post shit. Just post it. Get used to listening to yourself. Get used to singing lots of music. It's some of the only ways that you'll be able to contextualize your voice for yourself, is through recordings and volume. Not singing volume, but volume of music worked on. Lots of music. One more question. By the way, thank you for all your time, Danny. I appreciate this so much.
Of course. I mean, there's so much to talk about always. I feel like when we talk, it's just like never ending. I could go on. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, it doesn't help that I guess I've been MIA for 8 years? Anyway. Details.
For a long time. Yeah.
Is there another question? Change the camera angle for a second.
Not seeing anything in the chat, so I think we're good.
Okay. Cool beans. Let me change the camera angle back, because I don't want to, I don't know. Anyway, all right. This is a great ending. Call to action. Got to put a CTA in, because that's the social meds meta. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Be a friend. It's the best I got. I don't know.
Good.
Bother me for useful things that are useful to you, I guess, is actually the thing that would be the real call to action. But anyway. Thank you for everyone who took the time to listen. Thank you, Danny, for your time. I was going to work on the stretch course with everyone. I might postpone that. My wife is not feeling terribly well, so I must tend to that and see how much time that's going to take. And then I have a voice lesson where I was going to take out some of the questions that we had in the Discord, and I was going to ask my teacher. So if I can help my wife, I just have to understand what the problem is, and then we might, in 30 minutes, reconvene, and that might not happen. And I know some of you in the UK, so that's probably your sign to go to bed. You shouldn't stay up for me. Anyway, thank you, everyone. Until next time, happy singing!